My name is Robin Long, and welcome to DIY, the column where we explore how to apply good andragogical practices in our real teaching lives. This month, so December 2021, we're going to look at how to create an interactive clickable lesson using Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. So what is an interactive lesson? Well, I've been using these quite a bit with the students in professional cooking. And like I said, today we're going to look at presentation software. So what I'm going to be showing you, this is a Google slide. It can be done similarly in PowerPoint, and I'll discuss a little bit about the slight nuances with PowerPoint. But you can use other software to do this. I did it in Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. And the idea behind an interactive lesson is that it presents the learning of the day in a visually stimulating, participatory, and logical manner. So what the student has to do is they have to click through the presentation, and each page gives them a bit of information or asks them to do something, but it's all chunked up into these small pieces. And so what I see on the screen is only what I'm being asked to do right there. So if you see here, we go through the steps in the lesson, what part is being done before the lab work, what part is being done afterwards, a little bit of the objectives, the activities are presented, some tidbits of information, there's some games in here, there's video on what's going on. There's things that has to be done in the learning management system. So in this case, because it's Google, it's Classroom. There's some how-to videos linked to YouTube videos. Then there's activities that the student needs to do to prepare for class. There's a little review tool, and then ta-da, we're done, and that's the end of the lesson. So you see that the lesson is presented in sort of this logical, smooth way that the student can one by one go through the elements to be done. So if we go back to the first slide and look through it a little bit more closely. So what this is this is a lesson for a competency that's taught in the lab. So in this case, it's fish and seafood. So this is taught in a kitchen. But the student does have some work to do before they're ready to be able to cook fish. So they have a little bit of work that they can do ahead of time, and that's what this slide is going to guide them to do. Then in the kitchen, they have their kitchen work that needs to be done. As you can see here, I put a little bit of time frames under here. So that's what this is done. So what we're really looking at is the to do before class stuff. That's what's in this presentation. So like I said, we do the learning objectives. So what's the goal of today? And you'll notice too that I also put in the slide numbers so that the advantage to something like this is the student can refer back to it multiple times. So if they get distracted or if they have to chunk up their learning before class, they can pick up and start off in the different areas of the lesson by just clicking over to the different slide. Okay, so that's a handy little feature here. So activity 1, you can see is it says, well, you're going to go to your classroom and you're going to complete this activity. So here the slide is telling them to go to the learning management system. Because this is the activity that's being asked, they're asking the students to do, each student has to have a copy. So that needs to be housed in a learning management system, not in this slide. But for example, there's an activity coming up where they can all do it, then it can be housed in the slide. So here you see that there's a little fish fact, and so the image here is linked out to a website that they can go read about facts about fish in this case. So here, fishtail. So this is a little interactive game that I inserted. So if they click on here, it brings them to an outside page where I create a little matching game, and what they're going to have to do is match the correct market forms of fish. So for example, they're going to look at this card, and they're going to look at this card, and those two don't match, so that's not what they're looking for. So now they're going to look for fish sticks, and we need to find fillet, and we haven't seen those images. Oh, there we go. There we find a fillet. So we click on that, and then they disappear. And I can keep going through and I can complete my work to find out about different market forms of fish. Once I'm done that, then I come back to the lesson. I click here, and this is where I've recorded myself explaining the recipes that we're going to be doing in the kitchen. So the student would click here to see the recording that I've made of the learning and the activity and the lab activities. So the student can then watch this whole video, and in this video I go through and I talk about the different, so the theory part of the lesson, but then there's also the, towards the end here, there's the recipes that we're going to be doing that day, and I can go through the recipes and point out some of the parts they need to watch out for, some of the techniques that might be a little bit adapted. I can point out some parts that I want to highlight. Then the student comes back to the clickable lesson plan. They go to their next activity, which is also housed in the learning management system because each student is getting a copy. They hand that in. When they come back, now they can watch the videos that will help them do the lab work in the kitchen. So these all link out to a YouTube video. So if you click on here, it brings you to the video that I want the student to watch. Okay, so they have their videos they can watch, and I always add how much time the videos are going to take, so that it helps the student to organize themselves and organize their time if they're trying to do a bit of learning in the small window they have when their kids are home from school and before they have to start dinner. Then they can say, well, I have 20 minutes, I could maybe do this page. So I always put the time that the videos take so the student can gauge how much time they have to learn. So these are the videos that they're going to watch to be able to do the lab work. They have a final activity where they're going to have to organize their work based on the videos that they've seen. So they're going to go to the learning management system, organize their work, submit that. They come back to the presentation, and there's a little review on safety practices. So in this case, I want the students to make sure they have sharp knives. So I want them to do a little review on why we sharpen our knives. So I put that in there, and then ta-da, their online work is finished. So that's the way a clickable lesson plan works, and that's the way it's integrated also with the learning management system, where they're housing the actual forms that the student has to fill out, each individual form. So although I can't link this presentation directly to the Google Classroom, because the Google Classrooms are only accessible by invite only, so you can't create a URL to link, I can tell them to go there, and then in the classroom, the activities are all labeled by day. So if I go into my fish and seafood classroom here, you can see that here's the lesson. So this is my lesson number 2, which is the one we're looking at. There's the presentation that you see, and there is everybody's little activities that they have to do. So there's their textbook exploration, there's their fish anatomy, and then there's their organizing of their work. So each student will go ahead and do their work and then hand it in afterwards. And that is a clickable lesson plan. Okay, so why is this a good andragogical practice? Well, if we look at the interactive lesson, there's kind of really 4 main elements that make it a really good practice. The lesson is really focused, organized, and guided. So presenting a lesson like this means that I have to, as a teacher, I have to keep sight of the heart of the learning. It's very easy as we go down that internet rabbit hole of finding information about a subject matter. It's really easy to get lost. And by creating an interactive lesson plan, I know I only have about an hour of the student's time, in this case, an hour of the student's time. So I have to focus really on what I want the student to learn. And so it keeps me focused on the heart of the learning. It also forces me to use different strategies and mediums. So we all know that we're supposed to have different ways of learning. So if I use a video for a few minutes, then I should do something afterwards that involves another medium. So writing something down or answering a little quiz or something like that. So by doing these interactive lesson plans, I could see, okay, well, here I'm using a video. Next, I'm going to try and incorporate a little bit of a quiz type element to verify the information, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of that's a good practice that happens. It keeps me focused on using different strategies and learning strategies and mediums. And also from the student's perspective, the information is easy to find, it's logical, it gives a really good overview of what the lesson is going to be, and it also gets the student to engage at the level that they can engage in the time frame that they have. So it really makes the student decide, okay, well, now I have this amount of time to engage with the lesson, so I'm going to do this part of the lesson, or I have the chunk of time to do the entire lesson, so I'm going to do it from start to finish, but without having the student get lost and go down a rabbit hole in an internet rabbit hole that they then lose focus of what the actual heart of the learning is. It's so for my students that either have a little bit of difficulty or the opposite, the students that need a little bit of extra enrichment, it's really easy to incorporate those elements without losing focus of the heart of what the learning is of that day. So it's easy to add those elements. Say if you want to learn more, go click on here. Or for the students that are having a little bit of difficulty, chunking up the lesson so that on the one slide you can really just focus on what that learning of that slide is. That's a really good practice. Visually stimulating and engaging. So in this case, you see there's some graphics in here, and the graphics are thematic. So in this case, we have all our little fishies in there, but I could easily just incorporate more graphic designs. I can incorporate images, and it keeps the students focused on what the subject matter is. By embedding items directly into the slides, it gets the students to interact with the material, because they're going to have to click on it, and they're going to have to open things, and they're going to jump between tabs. And this is also promoting digital literacy, but it's promoting digital literacy in a way that's somewhat controlled and focused. Okay? Flexible delivery. So by flexible delivery, what I mean is that it gives the teacher the ability to use this lesson in many different ways. Because everything is housed in this one area, you can make these lessons available ahead of time, and then it's up to the students to organize their learning. So for the students that need a little bit of extra time, they now have access to this information, and they can either chunk it up and learn it little bits at a time before class, or students that are working during the week can have access to this on a weekend and get all their work done on a weekend. It doesn't penalize the students that can't do that, because then you can also have these accessible during class. So for example, what I used to do with this is at the beginning of the class, the students that didn't have the work done, and I can see when the work is done because it's submitted in the classroom, when the students that didn't have the work done, because that theory part is part of the class anyway, that hour at the beginning is devoted to that, it's not taking away learning time. I can give them an iPad, sit them in the kitchen and say, okay, do your hour's worth of work, and then you can start your recipes. But for the students that were able to do the work at home, they can come in and they can start right away on doing their recipes. So it allows a little bit, it doesn't penalize anybody for doing the work ahead of time or having to do the work the day of. It also responsibilizes them for their learning. So by doing that, you're now telling the students, okay, guys, you control when you want to learn. There's no more excuses as to, oh, I didn't have time. No, you have access to this. So yes, you do have time to do this. When and where you decide to do it. Because this is published to the web, and that's a feature I'll discuss coming up, it's all you're sharing is a link. And so the student can easily access that link just about anywhere as long as they have internet access. So they're on the bus on the way in, they can click on the link and they can look at it. They're at home online, they can look at it. In school on a device, they can look at it. It's easily accessible. So, and because you're allowing them that flexibility, Even students that, let's say students that were absent, now all the material, the theory part, like you can't make up for the lab work, but the theory part is now available, and it's available in a way that's really easy for them to catch up. So the student is now in control of when, where, and how they learn. So, and this is also a really good example of differentiated learning. So differentiated learning, like, it encompasses a lot, but really what you see here is the flexible learning. So the fact that this, because we're using different mediums and we're using different time frames, it really makes the student responsible for their learning, and it's giving them advocacy to choose the ways that are most convenient to them. They still have to learn the material. The material, that's not going away, but they can now make it a little bit easier on themselves. So there's also the idea of student choice in differentiated learning. So they can't choose what they learn. That's dictated. They have to learn the material of the day, but how they decide to learn it, that's a little bit more up to them. So I've given them videos, I've given them links to outside sources, I've presented the material, I have activities for them to do, I have verification systems in there that are linked to the Google Classroom. And so if a student can do that work and then turn around and say, well, I don't want to fill out this form, but I do want to do it this way, then as long as that fulfills my criteria, well, that's student choice, and that's okay. But because the material is organized and presented in a logical fashion, it encourages that part of differentiated learning. It also shows a shared responsibility for learning. So as a teacher, I have to set up so that you can learn. So now I've presented the material and organized it where I'm really focused on the heart of the learning. And that's my responsibility as a teacher, is to present that material in a way that keeps focused on the goal of the day. And your responsibility as a student is then to learn that material. So a clickable interactive lesson plan encompasses also the idea of shared responsibility for learning. And then, of course, it also goes after quality curriculum, because I am now making sure that the material I'm making available is good and is up to date and is what I want the student interacting with. Partly because I verify the videos and the websites that the students are going to, but it's also the activities that I'm presenting. I'm making sure that the information I'm putting in there is relevant and important to what today's learning is. So this is why this type of a lesson has really good andragogical practices. Now, from here, let's go ahead and learn how to make one of these. All right, so let's go ahead and get started making our interactive clickable lesson. And I kind of go about it in 6 steps. My first step, as I always do, my macro planning for my entire competency. So I can see where I'm going, and it really helps me stay focused on what exactly that lesson is going to be about. My second step is I prepare my activities. I find videos that I want the students to look at. I bookmark sites. I get inspired by some of the things I see. I prepare answer keys. I do all that that office type work. Step 3 is then I look at creating a template or choosing a template to use in a Google slide. Step 4 would be now I actually start working in the slide, and I create a landing page, a table of contents. I start organizing the slide so I have a general idea of how it's going to flow, sort of storyboarding it, if you will. Step 5, I then start entering my links, my images, my videos, the instructions, the activities. Like, I start actually building that part. And then step 6 is when I'm done, then I share it with the students on a feature called Publish to the Web. Okay, and I'll go over Publish to the Web, and just a little side note, Publish to the Web is not available in Microsoft as of yet. But you can still do this kind of a lesson plan, but it's just that final step which makes it just a URL that you can't do. But there are workarounds around that. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first step in this process for me is I do my macro planning. And my macro planning is not a very fancy document. It's a lot like what we learn when we're at the University of Sherbrooke and we're doing our lesson on when we're doing the learning about planning. They have us do that giant document that doesn't fit on a screen. The macro plan. It's that, but I've simplified it, and it's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it really doesn't matter. It's just for me. I'm the only person who sees this part. But the first thing I do before I even start doing those clickable lesson plans is I make a macro planification of my entire competency. So yeah, I stick in the program of study. If there's any resources in the textbook, I put that. In my program of study, I'll highlight the focus areas that are going to be on the exam. I'll put also the sort of the administrative information, the code, the how many hours I have, if there's any parameters that are in there. Then I'll go ahead and I'll set up the planning where I'll put in the dates of the class, I'll put in the hours, that kind of stuff. Then I'll start dividing up my objectives, my theory, like all this stuff that we learn this at university. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because this is what helps me chunk up the lessons. Because often I know what I want to do in the kitchen, but it's the theory part that I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to focus on today? Because really, I can't have my students do a ton of theory. The focus of professional cooking is to be able to do the cooking. Knowing helps, but it's not the focus of what it is. So I really try and keep the theory down to about an hour a class. If I'm assigning 3 hours of theory to learn, I'm probably losing focus of what the heart of the competency is, which is the student actually preparing food, not just knowing how to do it. So that's why I think it's important to do this macro planification. And like I said, it's pretty basic stuff, right? Like here, if we look at the class number 2, which is the lesson plan that you're looking at, you can see that, okay, I have some theory that they have to do. I have the recipes that they're going to be doing in the kitchen. I put in some links to activities that I'm going to want them to do. See, this column here is pedagogical activities. Then I always have a little review element that they're going to have to think about, hygiene and food safety, or worker safety, that kind of stuff. And then my evaluation tools, so that there's self-assessment for both the students, so they can know how their learning is going, as well as assessment for me, so I can see how the student's doing. Okay, so the first part that I do is I do the macro planification. So that's my step 1 right here. My step 2, so after I've done the macro planification, my step 2 is that I'm now going to think about preparing my activities and my answer keys, finding videos, bookmarking sites, getting inspired by stuff. So if I go back to my macro planification here, I'll say, okay, yeah, I got these recipes to do. So I'll go ahead, and at that point, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to put all these recipes accessible in a document. Here are the recipes that I make sure that everything's set up for the food that I've ordered. And then I'm also always going to verify that the students are actually looking at the recipes and setting up the organization of their lab work, is I always have a few questions, and the questions must be answered before they can go ahead and start their work. So that's here. And then they can either answer them orally when they come in, I'll verify it, or they can answer it on a piece of paper, they can write it on this, or they can click here and use a Google form. It's all the questions are easily accessible, okay? By using the Google form, it registers it so I can verify it, but even if they do it on a piece of paper, here I'll take a picture of their work, and then I submit that in their file, and then I know the work's being done. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do my activities. I'll make sure that those are ready to go. What else do I got in here? Let's go back to my lesson 2. I'll also prepare my presentation for the theory part of the lesson. So the clickable lesson, that's how I have the students interact with the theory, but I still have theory to give that day. And so I'll create a little video, I'll create a presentation where I'm preparing, just like I would have done in life before, where I stand with my PowerPoint at the front of the classroom and I just kind of talk them through it. So I prepare that presentation with the material of the day, but then instead of presenting it to the students, what I do is I do a recording of it. And so I prepare the recording ahead of time. So now you can see right here is the recording of it. So you can see, so I prepare all my activities. I go through YouTube and find the videos that I want the students to learn and see. I'll just link the videos into here, right into my macro planification. And so this is where I gather my resources. I create my material that I need. I get everything ready to be inserted into that lesson. Step 3 is where I choose or create a template. Okay, so because this thing, I mean, they look pretty cool, right? They're pretty schwank with all the colors and the fish, and it's very, very thematic for fish and seafood, and that's wonderful. But I didn't invent that. So I can spend an enormous amount of time putting all the graphics in the Google Slides myself, or you can use sites that have templates ready. So there's a bunch of them. There's Slides Go, there's Slides Carnival, there's all kinds of them. Okay, and a lot of these are free. They do have upgrades, but I don't think I've ever used an upgrade. So you can go in here and you can choose one that you like. And all you do is once you found one that you like, is you're going to go ahead and let's click on it here. You see, you just download the template. It'll save it directly to Google Slides or PowerPoint, and then you have access to the template. Okay, so for most of the ones I do, I just use a template. I'll go find one that I like, and to be honest, what I end up doing is I have now I have a file of templates that I'll go and I'll look for, and I'll be like, oh, that's a cool little template, and so I put it in here, and then I have a bunch of templates that I then just copy and go ahead and use them. Okay, so that's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the template, or I'm going to create my own. And I'll be frank, I rarely create my own. I often just use it from Slides Go. Once I've done that, then I'm going to have to go ahead and create my landing page. And so now I'm going to actually start setting up the template, because in this case, it's a template I use for all 10 lessons. So I'm going to go ahead and set up that template, because I know that the landing page is always going to be the same. I know that the table of contents is always going to be the same. I know that there's always going to be a review pane. There's always going to be some video panes set up, right? So I go ahead and set up those templates, because when you look at them, these templates actually have, when you make a copy from Slides Go, there's probably about 50 different slides on here, okay? So, and they have a lot of resources that you can swap in and out. Yeah, there's 49. So you can see here, and these are just resources that I can go ahead and copy paste onto different slides, right? See, there's my little fishies right here. So there's a template if I want to add an image that looks like a tablet. You know, there's all kinds of stuff here. There's a calendar if you want. Like, they have all these different slides. So I go ahead and I set up my splash page, so the page that the students are going to land on. I set up the table of contents. I set up the learning objectives. I set up the slide that's going to have the theory of the day and the description of the recipes. I go ahead and set up the activity slides. But right now, these are just generic, because each lesson it's going to be a little bit different. But at this point, so step 3 is where I go ahead and set this up. So then once my template is ready to go, and I've created my landing page and my table of contents, and I've kind of organized my slides the way I want, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a copy of this template, and then I'm going to start working on an individual lesson. So let's go back and look at our lesson number 2 right here. Let's go ahead and open up our lesson of the day. And so what I would have done is I would have made a copy of that template. And now I'm going to go in and insert my links and change the information slide by slide. And I'll move stuff around as I want it. So for example, lesson of the day here is I'll put in the date. I'll put in so obviously the competency stays the same, but I might have to change the date. Here in the slides, the steps of the lesson, like as long as that is the same, I leave it. But if there's something that's going to change slightly, then I'm going to add that information here. So I'm just going to, in the field, go ahead and add the information. The learning objectives, so same thing. So the first couple of slides don't really change, right? Understanding today's goals, like that slide's going to be there every single time. But this time we're learning about resources. We're learning about market forms of fish. We're learning about understanding the fish preparations and fish anatomy. Like there's different slides in here. I add the slide numbers, but I honestly don't do that until the very end, because I tend to move stuff around. If I add the slide numbers now, I guarantee you by the end of this, those slide numbers they're not going to be valid anymore. But I put the slide numbers as well. Okay. And then I start building my activity. So this one, you can see activity number 1 here. There's no links in here, because this activity, what I want the student to do is go to the classroom and complete the activity. So if they go to, so they're going to read this, and so there's no links in here. This is just information that I've put in for the students. Okay, so then the student will then go ahead and go to the classroom and do the work that they're supposed to do. But as far as we're concerned, when we're building this template, there's no links in this one. But if we go to the next page, here I have some links. Okay, so what I've done here is this if you look at this here is linked out to, you can see, to whoops. This is linked out to another site. Okay, so this is linked out to, what is this, World Wildlife Fund. Now to link it out, all I do is I right click on the shape here, and it opens up my menu right here. I can reset the image. So in this case, like, that image wasn't there before. This is an image I found online. So before it was whatever. I can't remember what the image was in the template. Let me see. What does it say? What's my image? See, the image here is just some sort of generic hand with a water drop. And so what I did is, to change that image, all you do is right click, and you're going to, oops, no, not right click. It's right here. You're going to replace the image. You'll either search the web for the image that you want, or you can choose it from your photos, from your hard drive. There's lots of options right there. So this is one I found online, and then I put the photo in, and then it is done. Okay. All right. So by replacing the image, then what's going to happen is I don't lose that circle, which is the template that's been put into the SlidesGo. So instead of just deleting this and adding a new image, by just hitting replace image, then I'm going to keep that same size, which is what I do. Once that's done, then once I've replaced my image, then I just go up to here, and it says insert link. And this is where I go ahead, and from my macro planification here, I'll find whatever the link was. I didn't even put it in my macro planification. It doesn't make me look very good now, does it? So I'd find my link right here. I would copy my link, and then I would go ahead and put it in right here, apply, and now this is an active link. So you can see the important information on this slide I put over here. That's what I want everybody to know. But for enrichment purposes, students that want to learn more, they can go ahead and click on this image and learn a little bit more. Okay, so this is, as I'm going through, this is what I'm doing. Each slide, I'm adding the elements that I want. So in this case here, there's a link out to the activity sheet that we saw, where this is the matching game right here that I had built ahead of time, and then you just share. This is with Flippity. If anybody's interested, you can go to flippity.com, and they have a bunch of templates that you can also copy and then create little interactive games with. They're pretty simple, but they're really fun. So all I'm going to do is add the information, click here to play the matching game, and then add my hyperlink using this function. And the hyperlink, what it's hyperlinking to is not the text, okay? Because when you hyperlink a text like this, so let's say I do that, it underlines. Now you can go ahead and remove the underline if you want, okay? But rather than doing that, what I do is I link to the box itself. So here we have the box. You can see that's highlighted right now. So when that box is highlighted, then that's what I link to. I actually link to the actual box itself, and not to, so if I, where's my flippity thing here? So I would go ahead and take my link and then paste in the link here. And now, oops, well, that didn't register. Copy, let's go here. Oops, let me edit my link. Edit link. There we go, apply. And now it's the whole box that's a hyperlink. And so that way the student doesn't have to go in and click on the little word as a hyperlink. And also it doesn't do the underlining that I then have to undo afterwards. So that's what I do. I link it to the boxes. Okay, so same here. You can see this one here, it's actually linked to the box. Okay, so if I move this, you'll see the words are in this box right here underneath. And I could have linked directly to this box, or you can also, this is kind of a fun little feature that you can do, is you can create a new box and put it over top of something. So let's say here I want them to click on the words, but let's say I wanted them to click on the fish instead of the words. Well, what I could do is I go ahead and take a shape. I create a box. I put the shape over top of the fish, and you can see the shape has some fill color. So I go ahead and remove the fill color. So I make it transparent, and I make the outside lines transparent. And now nobody sees that box, but that box is there because I can click, oops, I can click on it. And you can see that that box is there. And then from there, I'll go ahead. I don't know why it gave me the link already. But then this is where I could go ahead and add a link and then have it linked to whatever I wanted. Okay. So this is sort of a handy little way to create links that make it easier to click on. Okay, rather than trying to get the links in the words themselves, you just make the boxes and make the boxes invisible. But that way, no matter where they click, it'll take them to where they need to go. Okay, so then I keep going through this, and as I'm building this, so here I've added my videos. As I'm building this, I'll remove slides that I don't want. So if I go back to my template here and I'm looking, and I'll say, you know what? Yeah, let's say this slide is in here, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to use that format. This 2-column thing, in the end, I'm not going to use it. Then I'm just going to right-click and delete my slide right here. Okay, and then and I can move my stuff around. I can say, go ahead. I can say, oh, you know, finally, this one I'm going to want up here. So it's easy to click and drag the slides to put them in the appropriate area that I want. Okay, and I keep going. So this is kind of a work in progress. I'm looking here. So we're at step 4 and 5. So I'm creating step 4 and 5. I'm kind of doing simultaneously, right? And I might even go back a little bit to step 3, because in the end I might realize, oh, finally the template that I created where I had put, I had ignored some of these slides, like this slide. I was like, I'm not going to use it. Well, actually I am going to set it up because I do find that I will use it. So although I presented these in a linear fashion, this would be more of a Venn diagram type thing, 3, 4, and 5. They're kind of done. I do them all at the same time. But because I did my macro planification and I have my activities ready to go, it's really easy to plug these things into where I want them to be. Okay. So this is as I'm going through, oops, no, we're in our template here. So as I'm going through my activity, I'm adding what I need to add. I link in my videos, I add the information, I give explicit instructions on what I want the student to do, right? So if I look here and I look here, I want them to watch these videos. This next video, you can watch all of it, or you can just watch the clip for the fish that we're dealing with. When I look at the activities, I make sure that the directions I give them are explicit. Go to the classroom, under this topic, complete the activity called Fish Anatomy, and when you're done, come back to this presentation. So I make sure I put in explicit instructions so the student knows what to do. The videos, so I know somebody had asked me this at some point, how come I don't embed these videos? I don't, because you can also just go ahead and let's say I wanted to embed the video directly. I can go ahead here, insert video, I can go to YouTube, and I could just copy paste the video. So for example, if let's go back here. This is my YouTube video that I was using. So I can copy my link. I can go in here. I would put my link in here. I can pop up the video. I can select it, and I could actually embed the video straight onto the slide, right? Which is what I had done for some of the other ones. Well, how come I didn't do that here? And the reason why I didn't do that, because in this case, I have 5 videos. And visually, I thought that the slide would get too busy. Now, I could easily do 5 slides in a row, and I could put in a slide that says the next 5 slides are your how-to videos. Please watch them one at a time. You could do that too. That's a personal choice. I decided just to put in the links. Okay, so all the whole how-to videos were kept on one page. That's a personal decision, but that's why those are like that. Okay, because like if you look at this one I embedded the video. So for example, that maneuver I just did where I go in, I insert video, and then I put the link from YouTube, I choose the video, it'll put it on the page, and then what I did is I just resized it so that it fit in my little template here of a TV screen, or it looks like a computer screen, and so visually like the graphics kind of look kind of cool, right? And then you can on the video playback you can decide if the video plays automatically, so that as soon as the student loads the page, the video starts, or if it plays on a click where the student has to click on the video. You can also take the video and you can have it start and stop at certain points. So let's say you have a long video, but you only want to showcase a few minutes of it for the learning of that day. Well, you can have the video start and stop at that specific time period. And that's a super fantastic function, because I find that a lot of the times the videos that I want, they're great, but there's only chunks of the video that are really important to what we're doing. So by doing that, I still give access to the students for the whole video. They can go ahead and take a look at the whole video if they want, but I'm keeping them focused on what the learning of that day is. So that part, the formatting part, I really like. Okay, so let's get rid of that. So that's why these guys are just links and they're not embedded. Okay, so that's what I so my step 3, 4, and 5 is I'm going ahead, I'm embedding everything, I'm setting up my slides, I'm organizing them, I just maneuver them around, I put in the links to where they need to go. I always check the links too. Don't forget to check your links. Okay, and then when I'm done is I'm going to share it with the students. So my lesson's done. Let's say, okay, so I now finished my lesson. I get rid of the template. So because I created a copy of my template, once I'm happy with it, then all these extra slides down here that I'm not going to use, I just delete them, so that the student doesn't open up a presentation with 50 slides, because that'll get really heavy really fast. Okay, so I just go ahead and delete those. Okay? And then but because I've kept my template, every single time I make a new lesson, I still have access to all those slides in case I want to go get a slide that has the whale on it or something like that. Like I can go ahead and use the different graphic templates as I want. And then the final maneuver that we're going to do, and this is something that's really unique to Google, and like I said, Microsoft can't do it, but Google has something called Publish to the Web, which is basically like using the slideshow button, but the slideshow button is something that I control. And by publishing to the web, it publishes it as a slideshow. So the students don't get distracted by the template, the slides on the left-hand side over here. Or even if you're doing grid, they don't get distracted by the other slides, right? So by publishing to the web, this remains hidden, and then all of this overflow of the graphics from the different templates. Oh, that one doesn't have an overflow. Let me see. None of these have overflows. I'm trying to think. See, there's one that has a bit of an overflow. Those get hidden, okay? So publish to the web, what that is under File, you're going to publish to the web, okay, down here. And publish to the web creates a URL that's going to be the access, as opposed to sharing the document here. Oops. As opposed to, hey, close. As opposed to sharing the document here on view only, for example, as opposed to that, Publish to the web is going to create a URL that's kind of like a view-only file, but it's a view-only website. It treats it like a website. So you can tell it to auto-advance the slides as fast as you want. I put it to every minute so that the student controls when they're when the slides are advancing, not Google. And I start the slideshow as soon as the player loads. Okay. Then I go ahead and hit publish. Oh, let's stop publishing it for a sec here so that you can see. So I do that, and then I hit publish. And Google will ask me, you sure you want to make this published? And I say yes. And this is the URL right here that I copy, and this is the URL that I now can put in any browser and search, and it'll now give me that clickable lesson where all I have to do is click through it and I'll be able to access the information. So here I want to click, remember our salmon image, I'll be like, oh yeah, let's click on the salmon and learn some more. And there's my little pop-out window to learn more about salmon. And then I can go back to my lesson and I can keep clicking through. But you see on the left-hand side, I no longer have those, the slides that are visible, the pages coming up. I do have access to navigation tools down here, but it keeps me focused on the material, okay? And that's the publish to the web function. Now, let's go back to here. For Microsoft, because Microsoft doesn't have that publish to the web function, you can go ahead and share it on view only, but then the student, and tell the student to do the presentation. So the student has access to it like this, and then you say, okay, go to the top, and then hit slideshow. So you could easily just at the top slide say, give the instructions to say, student, this lesson is designed to be used in slideshow mode. Okay, and then the student will click on slideshow, and that does the same thing. So you can see here in slideshow, it's now I'm at the same function. The other possibility for Microsoft is to use it in third-party software such as Genially. And Genially is what I'm using here to do these slides. You can then import your presentation into Genially, and Genially is free software. You can use it for free. They don't have all their templates available for free, but they have a lot of them. So you go ahead and create a presentation here from Genially, and it'll ask you if you want to import a PowerPoint. And so then you just go ahead and import your PowerPoint, and it'll set it up. You verify the links, and you make sure everything works. And then this will you can create a URL that you can then share. Okay, so that's another possibility that you could do if you have Microsoft. And that's how, let's go back to I just closed it. Whoops. That's how I create an interactive clickable lesson plan using Google Slides.